think a paragraph or something about the psychological impact is of value. And I know you have daily interactions with some of your clients. Perhaps sitting down with somebody that has a good ability to vocalize some of this. Just take notes. And stuff like that. Just changing from a position to where you knew where you were going to get your medicine the next day to and now being in a position to where I'm not even sure, that has impact, So that was my thought. I saw Shona and
I think that there's also a intimidation and a bullying effect from the letters going to a few and then never knowing where the others are going to fall. Like you said, I don't know how to put that in good phrasing, except for there's a lot of even definition legally of bullying going on right now in America, and I definitely feel like we're being intimidated and we're being bullied. Even if we haven't gotten the letter, we're just kind of, waiting for the other shoe to fall, I guess. State of psych ops.
But worse than that is 28 years, going on 30 years now, I've been doing healings in this area, and I've seen many people who would love to smoke cannabis who have very much symptoms of diseases that could be remedied or made livable with it, but instead they just don't have the money and they just don't smoke. And I see these people, period. That's just the other day I was down shopping and I had this guy in front of me, didn't even recognize me since I grew my and oh my God, he looks like shit. I mean, these people, there's toxicity of the pharmaceuticals, decades. I was like almost 30 years I've been doing this. I've seen these people. They're my own case studies. And the ones that don't smoke because they don't want to get involved with us, they don't want to, they just can't afford it. They're retired for 28 years with AC Transit. Better to move to Santa Rosa. That's where all the cool people move. So it's like, and these people, the toxicity, the skin, it's just the pharmaceutical it's just deadly with these things. I just gasp when I see these people, and they don't last long. They don't last long. And if they had cannabis, they would last so much longer and have their lives would be better. But so you just scraping the tip of the iceberg there. It's hideous,
Yeah, I agree that there's a host of issues around that we can focus on. I think because our impact report is really trying to narrow down and talk about the effect that the federal government and the issuance of their DOJ letters since October of 2011, that's kind of what I want to focus on is if you throw a rock into a pond, there's ripples, and that's what I want to talk about is those ripples. I see the DOJ letters as a giant rock being thrown in our pond, and let's talk about all the ripples that went out from them making that splash. I think that you bring up kind of a correlation of what I was talking about when it comes to just the intimidation and I know that in talking to dispensary operators, they're oftentimes, the first time they see another operator, oh, you guys didn't get a letter or anything. Oh, no, I didn't. We're doing great. You didn't get a letter. It's a subject of conversation, it's a subject of concern. It's something that people don't talk about necessarily to non-dispensary operators, but they're certainly talking amongst themselves and regularly trying to keep apprised of the latest FOIA requests, sunshine requests, and everything else from the government. So,
I would say it even has a bullying effect to the point that if you had been thinking about opening up a dispensary or your group of collectives was getting prepared to, you'd certainly even have second thoughts,
Oh, no doubt about it.
there's a huge bully, the big bully rock has like, you know, future consequences to where everything is kind of pushed back for a while.
There's a cloud of uncertainty, I guess is how they would phrase it, right?
Right.
They would talk about that. It creates anxiety for everybody involved.
Well, let's talk uplifting things now. This bums me out.
Well, no, I mean, I'm not here to.
No, I understand.
I'm not here to raise people's spirits. We're talking about the reality right now.
Yeah. Well, we've come far. We've come some way. Got a long way to go, but got many rivers to cross.
Coming back to your question, Cannon, you know, what can you do to help push the ball forward?
I just will probably have a little bit of more time than most in that area, you know, so.
Well,
We can do like visualization things, I can categorize, like, you know, recalculate, redo the data so it's easier to read.
If you want to help with that, that would be excellent.
I think, you know,
Have you seen the spreadsheet?
Yeah.
Let's turn to that spreadsheet, because I think
that'd be excellent.
Yeah, exactly.
I think it would benefit, you know, I like the work that Michael did. I think, you know, I certainly applaud doing this legwork. The problem that I run into with it is, I know the city. I know where District 1 is. I know where District 2 is. I know where not every one of these zip codes are, but I do know where every one of these neighborhoods are. I think that changing this into a graphic that is a map of the city could be of real value.
I agree.
Because the visual is much easier to read than a chart.
I'm more of a text programmer type. I'm not a visual artist. I appreciate people who can do more visual
If
presentations.
the two of you could collaborate and turn this into an actual diagram of the city with maps, I think it would be valuable to have this with the visual diagram next to it. Because, you know, some people process text very well. Some people process visual graphics. And
Exactly.
I think especially because
And administrators and bureaucrats love maps and color-coded legends.
Yeah, I think
They
you
love that
give
shit.
people a map without the text, people don't necessarily believe it. They need the data to give them the confidence.
We need both.
You need both.
We need both. So if we could generate that map, I think that's going to be very helpful. One of the other things that's also good on that map would be if you can. I think there's value is if you can if your map includes the main muni lines.
Okay.
And the only reason I say that is we have a city that, you know, has a lot of public transit and a lot of patients that rely on public transit. And so if you know, maybe just the main muni lines are reflected, you know, so it kind of gives you some context as to where things are,
Yeah.
I think that could be helpful.
Although I imagine that access is not so good from the T as it is from, you know,
Absolutely.
certain other lines.
Oh, no two lines are created equal.
Right.
You know that.
Exactly. Yeah.
I have one thing first, and then I'll go to you, Shona. The other thing that we don't have data on, that I think could be of value, is talking about what has actually happened in the neighborhood of these closures. What do I mean by that? For example, Divinity Tree on Polk Street. My understanding, I can't confirm it from personal experience, but my understanding and from complaints from neighbors, from a couple of articles written by Mr. Roberts, and just also from talking with people, is that in fact the block has increased in terms of criminal activity, increased in terms of loitering in that area, and increased in terms of vandalism. I can also speak from personally observing it that the same has occurred on 9th Street at HopeNet's prior location. The block virtually had no loiterers during the time and point when they were open. You go by now, any given day, they have actually removed the graffiti that popped up immediately after they closed, but you still go down, that block has a lot of people just lurking, for lack of a better word.
Speed freaks.
Well, actually, to be more exact, there's a return of gang activity to both of the blocks that Divinity Tree and HopeNet were on. And when I did Reagan's interview, it's absolutely clear that it was I've said to him, it's actually the return of some of the gang members that have been there prior.
Oh,
I wish we
no.
had pictures of the, I mean, I guess I could try to scour their website and see if there are pictures of the block when they're open, and then you could take like a subsequent picture of the block now.
I think that, you know, if we can get a yeah, we don't have to get all of them, but just to get one or two would be, before and afters would be great.
As far as Medford being on, you know,
That-
nearly
you
on
can see-
16th and
you can
Mission,
see the
I
difference
mean, the
there.
activity there, you know, I think we're all
So
aware.
let's make a list. Do you mind seeing if you could do photos? The three we're identifying is Divinity, HopeNet, and Metathrive.
I was attacked right in front of that place. I was carrying
Which one?
groceries home from Rainbow Grocery. I was walking right by 9th Street, and this tweaker just came up and kicked me or something. I put my bags down. I said, I kicked his ass. I kicked him halfway down the street. And he ran like a pussy, too, you know. I said, son of a bitch, what's the city coming? He spit at me. That was it. He fucking spit at me. I couldn't, excuse me. I know.
Oh, people do it all the time.
Goddamn spit at me. A perfect stranger came up and spit at me. I was like minding my own business, carrying 2 bags of groceries home from Rainbow Grocery, and this fucking stupid freak just spit at me. I just kicked his ass and ran down the street after him, and thank God he ran out of the way. I would have killed him. I would have banged his head on the concrete.
Oh,
I would have.
I'd be careful about what kind of statements you make, because there is a video recording being made of this.
But
Yeah,
I think the
I-
difference.
I'm not ashamed of anything I said.
No, I
But I
always
think the
remove this.
difference where it changes, just so for people to know, is that the dispensaries had surveillance and the gangsters knew it. And they knew that they would be on camera, and they knew that there was security and it was professionally hired security. And so they moved a block over, or a block that way, or a block this way, you know, but.
Well, it was not just the security surveillance angle. It was also the understanding that the local police, especially the beat officers, had a relationship with each of these dispensaries. And, you know, goes a huge way if, you know, a beat officer is trying to track down a criminal where they know they have a, you know, reliable security footage and stuff like that. So those relationships, you know, changed since the closures, and before and after photos, I think those are the three that I would think that may illustrate some of the most, you know, visual changes. Market Street, in terms of the you know, the block itself hasn't really changed much where the Market Street Co-op was, because it's already a fairly decent neighborhood kind of coming up there. Trying to think of any of the other
Baker
clues.
Room is a little bit more into the residential area. It actually had to be grandfathered in, so while Fillmore and right down at that hub is a little bit, right up there is fine.
Yeah, there's not really been a change in the Vapor Room location, you know, in terms of just, you know, the immediate block or anything. Let's take a look at the other closures.
Infinity Tree, I mean, that one, for so many reasons, I mean, that's just depriving the whole Tenderloin area of even
But they
What
built a
about-
beer
what
garden
about
across the
Mr.
street from me that's loud as can be, and the cops don't say anything. These it's a frat house with these rich punks, and they get drunk out of the beer garden right on Fell and Octavia. I mean, it took me kissing Batman Duffy's ass to get the name of Sergeant, what's her name, of the police department, and I had to go around and get 30 petitions to finally get them to quit the music from there. But the booze is railing. You know, we got, as you said yesterday, we got assemblymen who are full. We've got people on our supervisors who are alcoholics. Batman Duffy.
What about Mr. Nice Guy right there on Valencia?
His town is right next, like right down
It's
there.
actually come up
I knew he'd
because
leave
they
it
built
in
like
the
a new vintage furniture discountery next door, so it's actually got, it looks a
It
little
looks a little bit, okay.
You wouldn't prove alcohol, that's for sure.
Yeah, no,
I mean,
I did that one.
If that location is a good demonstration one, it's the highest impact
I don't
on
like when I
this
use
report as
language
well.
like that.
Because of the fact that that
Divinity
means
tree,
the Divinity Tree.
Right.
Because that's literally where the Hayes Valley Tenderloin north of Market went from 1 MCD to 0. That's the highest impact.
So that's,
He's a
that's
Christian.
the one to get.
We're the barbarians.
And we can also show the impact on that neighborhood. That neighborhood is
Divinity tree image.
All right, I think those, you know, would be very good and, you know, help to illustrate. Aside from a map, aside from photos, I think we have most of the info we're looking at. Is there anything else we want to include, you know, for,
Now that I think of what I was going to say, maybe doesn't go in it, but this part of me wanted to point out that one in 6 voters in San Francisco identifies as disabled American. And I know that, like, you know, we've broken it down into super visual districts, and it just, you know, I guess it probably doesn't fit in, but some part of me feels like saying to the supervisors, don't dismiss this, because that's a lot of, you know, when we're talking about the distance to travel, we also vote, you know.
wait, let me ask you that statistic. You said 1 in 6 voters in San Francisco identify as disabled.
That's a statistic from
No,
the
I see the calculator going in his brain. He's calculating everything right now.
That's an insanely high percent if it's true.
A lot of people take their retirement here.
So where I got that information was the Mayor's Office on Disabilities presentation to the Board of Supervisors.
Don't forget, the AIDS people all flocked here when, because this was the only mecca for them, you know.
Well, it's a mecca for people with mental health issues.
Right, all
for
those
people with
things. San
HIV,
Francisco.
for
So you're
people-
saying,
It's just voters.
yeah, I mean, but it's just vote, I mean, that's another,
Well,
1 in 6 voters. Let's assume it's 1 in 6 people of the population. You're trying to tell me there's basically 175,000 out of the 800,000 in this city identify as disabled. I find that hard to believe if that's the case. 175,000, you know, basically just shy of 20% of the city identifies as disabled. I fully recognize your point that it's been a long time rallying point for people with AIDS, moving from not just throughout this country, but from throughout the world.
Well, it's been proven it's not about your genetic code, it's your zip code that determines if it's, I watch all the spin shows, so I know that's a fact. Rachel Maddow even talked about it. It's not your genetic code, it's your zip code. Like people who live in Idaho, don't have as good a chance as we do in here. You know, San Francisco is like a mecca for anybody with any kind of an ailment, you know, because the rest of it, believe me, I've tried to live in other places. That's why I kiss the ground every morning I live in San Francisco, because I know.
I like what you're saying, you know, I hear why you're saying it. I don't think it's really appropriate to include in this. And I'd be more comfortable including it if I had, you know, an actual hard and fast statistic from either the registrar of voters or somebody.
It's from the Mayor's Office.
It's from the Mayor's office? Because, I mean...
Added to that, where we were talking about a paragraph, we're talking about the mental, emotional, social impact.
Yeah, I mean, and I think, you know, we could include that statistic in there.
And I can re-verify it through...
Yeah, I'd like it verified a little more, just because that number,
I'll cite
if
it from the
it's
Mayor.
true, is exceedingly large. You know, and I'm not saying that it's not true, I just have a hard time believing it's true. I mean, very well could. I mean, I grew up in Florida, so I mean, I understand that, you know, there are places in the world where your populations are really skewed one way. For example, Florida's skewed towards old retired people. I mean, that's who's there.
And they retired.
That's why they didn't want them to vote.
What's that governor's name?
Jack.
Rick Perry, you know, what's
Jack
his
Perry,
Okay.
No, who's the one in Florida? Who's the governor of Florida? Scott Brown.
Yeah,
No, he's the one in Massachusetts.
All right,
If
you can get that, if you can reconfirm that, or get, you know, the
Carla
numbers on that.
Johnson from the Mayor's Office on Disability. I mean, obviously, this room is totally skewed, but if I identify as a disabled American.
No, I recognize that I'm oftentimes surrounded by a distinctly high percentage of people that identify as disabled, but I don't always necessarily project that onto the rest of the city population.
Well, when I heard it at the presentation, it was a presentation where Susan Misner was kind of handing the torch to Carla Johnson, and Susan Misner always was saying that to the board. You know, we've been through a lot of trying to get legislation through and some changes around accessibility to this building for people. So, you know, it's sort of been a chant of the Mayor's Office of Disability, and I'll totally re-verify it and say, you know, I could even send something about Sasha, did I hear that correctly at that presentation?
Okay. Michael?
So, Shona, I also think that specifically within the medical cannabis community, the percentages of disabled people is a much higher number than in the general population.
Right, but this had nothing to do with...
We should get both. No, we should have both, I think. We should
I actually am going to say that's
statistic.
A statistic impossible to generate.
Okay.
B, a statistic that would not be good for us to generate. And the reason why I'll answer the second question is because there's a host of different perceptions regarding the medical cannabis movement. A lot of people really perceive it as an excuse for 18-year-olds to recreationally smoke. I don't want to spend time and or my energy breaking down the statistics of who actually goes to a dispensary to either provide support or, anything in favor of that argument that it's, oh, this is a recreational misuse by college students.
I was thinking exactly the opposite in terms of the implication that...
But if you're able, let me put it this way, if you're able to say, 20% of the medical cannabis registered patients in the city identify as disabled, well, by proxy, then you're saying 80% don't identify by disabled.
It might be more than 20, if the city is 20%, I would say it might be 50% or more. So if you had
what we're saying is...
And you would say that everyone has a medical condition that they need medical cannabis for in order for them to have a recommendation. That doesn't mean everybody with a medical condition is disabled. There's a difference.
I completely understand what you're saying, but the impression is, let's say we write something that 30% of the medical cannabis patients are disabled. The impression by the lay reader is that the other 70% are suffering from skateboarders' toe and
or baby pants disease.
How we present that statistic and not just
entirely does, but I think in terms of us focusing energy, that even if you're able to tell me that 50%, and I think that's a high number, but 50% of the people registered in the city identify as medical cannabis patients also identify as disabled, I still don't think that helps us.
I was just thinking from the standpoint of
You need an educational campaign. An educational campaign, because even the medical community's got their head up their butts as far as, because I had 3 surgeries this year, and this Barbie doll surgeon I had, she was a great surgeon, she did good on both my feet, but boy, mentally she was like all against cannabis,
Rupert Murdoch's media.
Michael, you're finishing?
Oh, excuse me.
I mean, I'm not gonna really go on at great length on it, because obviously if there's not a consensus that that's a good thing to have in this report, then it's not. I was just, in terms of what I'm thinking on it, the idea that people may be profoundly affected by the closures because not only do they need medical cannabis for a medical reason, but they're also disabled, which means that...
So you're thinking about mobility.
Mobility, but you can't necessarily distinguish like what kind of disability somebody has.
That's where I run into part of the problem, is we end up parsing which disabilities qualify, which don't.
Well, but anybody with a disability may have difficulty, whether it's a mobility impairment, whether it's a mental impairment. It can affect their ability to access whatever resources are there.
I don't think the number is as necessary as the statement.
Okay.
The statement holds more weight than putting out a statistical number that could be rebutted.
So maybe the way to do this is to incorporate the number that Shona has for the city, and then say, plus the impact is disproportionately great upon the medical cannabis patients that are affected, because even more of them than average are
You
disabled.
just tie them in together. If you took away one half of the grocery stores in the city and said there's 1/6 of all the voting residents are disabled, then you would have a huge impact to the ability of people to get food.
Right.
The final reports and the impact report, because I know that cultivation is making a final report, patient advocacy is making a final report, legal's doing an impact report, and I believe the Veterans Committee has a survey of veteran services that they are going to have as their final report. So I kind of wanted to have a meeting to, given we can't vote on it, we've been kind of trapped in this sort of obstructionist math, but at least all the task force members
So do you have roughly a time window, and I don't need the exact date, but are you looking closer to that last week?
Yeah.
Basically the week between Christmas and New Year's?
Yeah.
Okay. that's the case, then I think we need to also set a timeline for ourselves to finalize it from our end and say, look, we're done, hands off, you guys run with it, and do it yourself. Let me pull my calendar up and just take a look.
Just get a quick clarification. Each committee is doing a separate impact report that are all getting joined, or no?
No, each committee is doing their own variation of a final report. So when the legal committee is doing an impact on the federal closures, the cultivation committee is doing something more based around their final input on cultivation, and then
So they're not even doing necessarily an impact study at all?
no. Theirs is a little bit just kind of a summary of work over. Really, we've been working together almost 4 years now, so it's going to be kind of a summary of all of that. And then patient advocacy is going to really center our report on what patients don't have and what was taken from us by the federal closures.
So patient